Well, good morning and happy Sunday, or good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are. Andy Nichols from Two Legs in my Sunday spot. Hope you're all doing well today. And just getting ready. 1 week from today, we'll be knee-deep in wrapping up the fest, actually, believe it or not, in Chicago. It comes pretty quick. Just when one wraps up, you start planning and going to the next one. Quick. And there's only 2 a year. Imagine when there was 3 a year in LA. I couldn't imagine. Two a year is enough planning for all those. Oh, good morning. Good morning, everybody. Wow. People popping on early. Heidi, the MVP. Tony, Laura, James. James, I am sorry I missed your Hackensack gig, brother. I have just been debriefing from Italy and trying to get Two Legs and Chicago stuff going. I will get to a gig. I promise you. I am sorry I missed your Hackensack gig. I'm sorry. James, Tony, Bill Leary. Good morning, everybody. Mike, see you in Chicago as well. Tony finished the Mind Games book. I'm just about done with that as well. I've got a couple more sections of it to go, just towards the end. But it did finish all the main entries in there from all the musicians, and it was again. And I'm not going to talk too much about it because we are going to record. I don't feel we haven't actually done a proper show in weeks because of our schedules, and I was away. And our last episode was like 2 weeks ago, so we are planning to try to record one tonight or tomorrow. Tom's schedule has changed a little bit. We're going to try to record that either late tonight or if tomorrow. And if we can't, we can't. I'm sure everybody will be okay with that. Hello, Susan. Thanks, brother. Appreciate it. Hello. Yeah, I would really like to try to record that one and get it done because I've made my way through all the music and the vinyl. I haven't touched the CDs yet in the set or even the Blu-rays because I just wanted to listen to the vinyl and read the book, and the first book, not the Thames and Hudson one. But we'll get to it. I mean, and there's so much to uncover, and still with the Easter eggs, and I'm sure those of you that follow everybody in the podcast same community, Chip Madinger made the rounds with this release on Ken Michaels, Fab Four Free For All, and the things we said today, guys. Buongiorno, as I said for 11 days. Hello, Ethan. I got the update from my partner this morning, so nice to see that you guys will be riding to Chicago together. Hello, Joe. Beatly Tone, my man. How are you, buddy? And I'm so glad that you joined me today, this afternoon, and I hope you're doing well. And I'll get back to you on email and your missus, and I am just tickled to bits that you are doing well. And I know you've got a long road, but you're on here and you're participating, and that's just great. And I hope you've got some nice tunes to keep you preoccupied while you're recuperating. I really do. All the best to you, mate. Hey, Joe. Good morning. I noticed an interview John gave to Jan Wenner in the book. Well, what interview? And again, a lot of those interviews that were pulled in the book were from like 1980 with John looking back. There wasn't too many contemporary interviews from John from 73 when the album was really pulled together. So they kind of, and as Tom and I talked about it, there's a lot of the year before prior stuff from 72 that's in this book to kind of bring it together. Obviously, there's all the stuff on the deportation and Utopia and the press conference, which is in that too. Yep. Okay. Hang in there, brother. Wow. What a strong guy. It'll be a real Fear and Loathing. Okay. Good morning, Charlie. Good afternoon. Yeah. Me too. That'll be pretty special. Hello, Ted. Good morning. There used to be two fests in the New York area. I only remember one. I mean, and I started going in 97 was my first fest. I was 16, and that was at the Meadowlands Crown Plaza, which is where it was forever. I think maybe there was one. The fest used to be in New York, and then it moved to New Jersey. And I don't think there was ever two in the New York area. And then in the mid 2010s, it moved around a little bit. It was up in Westchester for a while, and then Rye. And then it came back down to Jersey, so it's bounced around a little bit. But yeah. Mr. Boyce, good afternoon, sir. Indeed. Hey, Laura. From Suffolk, yeah. So I'm sure you've all watched Kit, and you've seen our live stream, and we're looking forward to it. We are looking forward to it. Did anybody see the picture? I think Richard Porter, if you know Richard Porter, he's the London Beatles tourist czar, kind of reports that Macca had spent a week at Abbey Road in July working on an album. So that's pretty promising. I would think, here we are now at the beginning of August, that would mean a fallish release, which is typical of the camps these days, right? Fourth quarter, we're going to hit you with everything. Something will come out from at least one of the camps, if not two of the camps. So if I had to bet, we will get a release from McCartney in maybe late September, October, if that's what he was doing on the album. I mean, we're nearly 4 years on from McCartney 3, and we know that the man just likes to be productive and busy always, even though we don't know it. He's always cooking something up, so that'll be interesting. And then if a live album does come out, because remember now his tour, his leg of the tour here starts in October. Does that mean any new songs work their way into the set list from a potential new album or a forthcoming new album? I am sure. To the extent that McCartney 3 bill was, I don't think so, no. Susan, I went to 2 Fest in Danvers. Like Beatle Fest ran by Mark Lapidus? Or was that something else? Interesting. Indeed. Indeed. James says he's been overdosing on one hand clapping this week. The big thing I really love is the version of Wildlife. Yes, I agree. Really? So when were those fests, Susan? I mean, Mark started the fest in 74. So that had to be like late 70s maybe, or 80s? Joe Pope ran the Beatles Fest in Massachusetts. Oh, okay. Yeah, because I mean, I didn't think it would have been Mark. It might have been a different group running it. Liverpool's been ablaze this week. Yeah, well, that was sad. Those of you that follow any news in the UK, there was a really, really sad, unfortunate event that happened up in Southport, which is a little bit north of Liverpool. Some kids were sadly killed. A crazy person with a knife. It was sad. And it's outside of Merseyside. Sad, but yeah. And they have their Beatle Week coming at the end of the month, which if you ever have an opportunity to check that out, go and experience that. Again, that's just more live music based. It's not merchandise and trip. I mean, it's all bands. It's all bands all over. Hello, Mom. Good morning. Yeah, Wildlife for sure. I've given One Hand Clapping a little bit of a break because we spent so much time with it in June, between the vinyl and the CDs, and we did multiple shows on it. So I've been listening to it here off and on when I go back into listening to Paul just to give it a break, just to listen to it. But I've given it a little bit of a break now that we are at the end of the wrapping up towards the late summer here, in early August. But a release that's worth obviously every penny that you spent on it, because it's just so well produced and modern sounding and soily and high, and of course we've all just been consumed with mind games, and we'll see what Paul has for us. Vegas and Florida. Is that the other conventions you mean, Mike? Susan says 90s maybe. No, this was really okay. Okay, so he did move it for. I would maybe in the 90s. Okay, I first went in 97, and I had friends that went for years. In New Jersey, so maybe he moved it just on an odd year to another location, because I had friends that went to it for in the really legendary days of the 80s when bootlegs were hard to get and things like that. Hello, Scott. Good morning. There's Scott O'Rourke, another radio DJ who's got a Beatles show out in Long Island. That's right, James. If everybody listened to what the Fran said, they'd be better off. Isn't that right? David Jackson. Okay. Frida. Well, we're going to see Frida this week coming up, because Frida Kelly will be in Chicago. And there is a really cool panel on the Sunday called Voices from Liverpool. And that's going to be Billy J, Frida Kelly, and Julie Evans. Julie Rossow is her. That's Mal Evans' daughter. And I know that they've moved on there, and the Evanses moved to London, but their roots all go back to Liverpool, and I'm definitely going to go check that panel out as well. Yes, Apple Music and Spotify, all the hidden tracks, which was what? I'm the Greatest, Rock and Roll People, and something else? Well, I Know has always been a favorite song of mine. And it's interesting, if you look in the book, and I've always felt this, but now it's affirmed now. I always felt that was a little subtle song from John to Paul. And when you read the entry for I Know, it's just littered with like Beatles memories and John talking about Paul. So maybe that's the Lennon camp officially saying, yeah, we know that this is what this song is about, which I think anybody who knows that song and probably feels the same way. Maybe you don't. I've always felt that was kind of an understated kind of song to Paul. And of course, John in 1980 just wrote it off and said, oh, it's just a piece of nothing. But I think that's and the book reaffirms what I've always thought, because it's in there. And then on that in the same entry, you see the letter from John to Paul and Linda about looking to get to play a gig together with the Stones. So the Elvis medley's not streaming. Beatle Fest for Beatle fans, yeah. One hand, yeah. Wildlife, absolutely. Oh, Jimmy. Graham, I didn't see Rolling Stone's worst album. See, I don't read any of that crap. Rolling Stone hasn't been a relevant magazine since the 1970s. It's too political now, and I wouldn't take any of their rankings or anything they talk about anything seriously. The magazine that said Rams sucked in 1971 now says it's great. I'm sorry, no credibility. They're not prog rock fans either. They don't like Genesis, Yes, or Tull or any of those bands. So, yeah, Rolling Stone to me hasn't been relevant outside of the McCartney, outside of Beatles-related interviews since the 60s or 70s. That's a magazine that I wouldn't line the birdcage with. Wings Over Europe will become fully available. Last Flight. Well, that should. And I think somebody asked Tom if he had ever heard Last Flight, and I know he said he's not a bootleg guy, but that's one worth having. I mean, when you have the members of Wings knowing this material, I think it's okay that we know the material. We asked Juber once when we had Juber on a couple of years ago. He's like, "Oh yeah, it's on Last Flight," and that's the last one of the last shows recorded with the last incarnation of Wings. I wonder if that would be kind of too cheeky to have him to bring that and have him sign the bootleg. Maybe I will. Hell with it. I've already got my Good Night Tonight signed by him. I just have to see where the hell it is. Oh, it's over there. I'll get it later. But yeah. Hello, Ellen. I thought it did too. Yeah, I think I'm going to bring Last Flight, now that you mention it. I'm going to bring it and say, I know this is like not cool, but Juber and Holly are going to be there. Would you sign it? Let's just have it out officially first. Let's have it officially, official. I mean, and again, the version I have is on the Vigitone label, so, and it's a high quality one. Jimmy, hi Andy, I hope everything's good over there. The whole Rolling Stone magazine crew has always been schmucks into pissing on stuff they didn't think was cool. Yeah, so you know what? You're not worth my time. I'm not paying to buy your magazine for your stupid opinions. Because it's, you want to be cool by dissing, music that the fans like, but whether it's Mary Had a Little Lamb or stuff that they, that they just deemed was uncool, even though it was, oh, it's cool just to not like this, but we're going to, we'll talk about the latest whatever and throw praise on it. I just don't like that. And I never have. Indeed. Andy, do you think Soily? I do. That and the live version of On Wings Over America, I mean, that just cooks. I'd say it's a toss-up between the one-hand clapping version and the one on Wings Over America, because that was the setlist closer. It was built up as this big kind of thematic. If you watched it live, if you've seen it live on Rock Show, the lasers are kind of shooting in there. You just had this 2.5-hour concert, and then, this big build up, and then Soily happened. It's tough. I think Wings Over America, Soily edges it out ever so slightly. Descratz, it is cool. Juber has, okay. Then I will be bringing Last Flight to Chicago. Yeah, it is a more garage band feel, and that's the sound that Paul was going for with that lineup of the band. Totally different version, raw in the studio. They're both great, but I have to give the edge just to the one on Wings Over America, just a bit. Yeah, whenever that comes out. Let me go back, check out the comment that I missed here. Tony, I just now learned that Jimmy yes. Yeah, his entry in the book was really cool too. Has that nice picture of him and John both wearing the Brooklyn shirts. So cool. Yeah, his anecdote was impressive in the book. And as well, I think my favorite entry of all the players on Mind Games would be Ken Asher. Ken Asher and his memories and anecdotes of everything from those sessions are a real treat to read in the book. His detail, his memory. Not that everybody else, I mean, everybody else has great input. Gordon Edwards and Keltner, of course. And Jimmy Iovine ended up working on 4 albums with John Lennon, 3 of his own, Mind Games, Rock and Roll, Walls and Bridges, but also Pussycats. Yeah, that's the thing. Video was not film. And as our friend Adrian Sinclair told us, they were a U-matic tape. And if you're in the industry, which I am, and you might know, U-matic tapes even predate Betamaxes. These big, ugly things that I don't even think you could convert them now. I mean, you could if you found. I ended up looking for one because in my career we actually have a library of U-matic tapes that I was trying to convert for somebody, and I searched high and low all over the state and couldn't find anybody with a machine to convert U-matic. So if anybody can, the McCartney team can, but it's just a question of how much better can they clean it up, because it was what it was recorded on. They are bulky things. I hadn't even seen one in my lifetime. Betamax, I kind of remember seeing a little bit of. I was brought up in the VHS era. Panasonic, the little push the button, tape thing opens up, you put it in, close it. But these tapes from the 70s, U-matic and Betamax, hard to convert these days. But if anybody can, MPL can, right? Russ. Hello, Russ. Good morning. Some songs sound better live. Soily. Hi. Yeah. Well, yeah, I agree with that. And I've said that on the show before, too. Most of the Wings Over America live, most of the Wings at the Speed of soundtracks are better live on that album than the studio version, in my opinion. Beware My Love, Silly Love Songs, Time to Hide. I just think they cook better on Wings Over America. I've always felt that. James was listening to Wings Over America yesterday. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And he teased us with that in 2010-ish. He teased us with Wings. He teased us with the rock show, Venus and Mars rock show, but he didn't go into the full version of it. Jimmy Iovine co-produced the best Dire Straits record, Making Movies. I'm not a huge Dire Straits fan. What year did that come out, James? Joe enjoys Last Flight more than Wings Over America. I could see that because the set lists are so different. You've got a lot of Back to the Egg material. You've got some Beatles songs thrown in there for the first time with Let It Be and Fool on the Hill. 1980. Okay, so this is before Brothers in Arms. It's the only Dire Straits CD that I own. Better live song, yes. Although a little funky outro in the studio is cool. Version's cool too. Hearing that, which is not done live. Come on, let's go down to the rock show. All that stuff, which makes the studio version just a little more unique. David, have you any Wings Tours programs? I have the very first one, which I actually have 2 copies of that. I have an original tour program from. It wouldn't have been the university tour. It would have been the first Wings Over Europe tour. It's the black one. I have an original copy of that, and then it was reproduced in the Wings Live Over Europe box set. I'm sorry, the Wings, the Big Barn Bed box set, 71 to 73. So I have a reproduction of that as well. But I do have an original one that I got in Liverpool that I bought in a bookstore, I believe on Bold Street. Is it a record store? No, it was a record store on Bold Street Records, which has since closed. But I bought that there. Music sound gear. Peter Jackson can probably clean it up, but they have porcelain-looking skin. He cleaned up Get Back too much. You're referring to one hand clapping. Yeah, well, they wanted to make it look modern, and that's the difference between Get Back and Let It Be, right? Like he wanted Get Back to have more of a modern look, so he really polished them up a little bit. I know what you're saying there, I do. I have no problem with how much he restored it, and Michael Lindsay Hogg's film is very different, and now that we have that, and I'm sure that'll be a very very good talking point in Chicago. As you know, if you don't know, those two gentlemen will be appearing virtually on Zoom on the main stage, I believe, on Saturday afternoon, and that'll be the first time and I don't know who's moderating it, but back in 2022, that was moderated by Ken Michaels and Darren DeVivo, along with Ken Dashow on the main stage. So that was pretty cool. That'll be the first time those gentlemen kind of get together again. We reached out to Michael Lindsay Hogg. I emailed his PR person back in June to see if he'd be willing to come on, because Tom had told me previously, before I had joined Two Legs, that Michael had agreed to come on Two Legs. So I was like, well, okay, if the film's come out, let's see if he's willing to come on. But his PR person wrote me back and said that he's just inundated right now with requests to appear on everything, and he's a little bit let it beat out, which I understand. I won't stop trying to get him, but we'll definitely try to get him back on. Do you think Peter Jackson can have the film? I know he's into more sound. He is. I don't know if that's something Paul would release to him. Right now, Peter is just concerned with the Beatles stuff. He hasn't really dabbled into the solo careers. I don't think Peter's going to jump into the solo careers. He's going to do the Beatles stuff first, and then if any of the camps want him to clean up stuff, they'll reach out to him. But I think Peter is definitely just doing Beatles projects at the moment, and I'm sure he is. But we won't know about them. As I've often said, that Jeff Jones and Apple should just give Peter Jackson the keys and say, "Here's everything, clean it up, and we'll stagger our releases for the next 10 years," which who knows, they might be. Susan says, Sean is releasing for streaming and download one of the Mind Games CDs every 2 weeks until John's birthday. I saw this. He had promised these drops will account for all the hidden tracks. So you're going to get more of the hidden stuff on streaming as time goes on. And I know Kit went live last night to kind of just recap her schedule for the Fest 2. And she had mentioned she didn't get for the Cube. And one of the reasons I went for the Cube, other than wanting to have it was the only place to get everything on vinyl. Outside of the 2 LP version of the Ultimate Mixes and I guess the Raw Studio Mixes, you can't get any other version of this on vinyl. You can't get the Elements, you can't get the Elemental, you can't get the Evolution documentaries on vinyl. It was one of the main reasons why I chose to get it, because I wanted to have that all on vinyl. Yes, the paraphernalia is cool, the maps, the games, and I'm on the collector's panel in Chicago, so I'm gonna bring one little trinket from that Cube out there. What I don't know, probably something from the Harrison crate, maybe a gnome. Maybe I'll bring a gnome for Kit, and then something from the Mind Games box, because I am on the collector's panel, but I don't want to bring too much because I am traveling and I don't want to damage anything. So that's the reasons why. It's the main reason why I opted for the Cube, because I wanted all of the material on vinyl first. CD's great, but I'm going to be honest with you. When I get CDs, I play them once in the stereo just to listen to it on my home system. Then I bring it into the office. I rip it so I have it digitally, and I own those files. I don't stream, but I rip them so they're in my Apple Music, they're in my iTunes, they're in my cloud, and then I file it. But the vinyl I go back to. So that's the reason why I bought the Cube, was for the vinyl. Let me catch back up with the comments here. James says it's not going to happen, but I would yeah, wouldn't that be nice? A remixed live album. Well, if you remember, there was some sweetening done to that soundtrack if you watch Rock Show, the Blu-ray that came out. There are some subtle audio differences on that versus the original film and the music on the album. Some of the vocals are mixed a little bit differently. Linda's a little more present on certain things. So there was some sweetening done with the Rock Show Blu-ray that came out. I remember because I saw that in the cinema in 2013 because it got a limited theatrical release. And I do remember hearing things a little bit differently when that film came out again on Blu-ray. Tony, the owner of the record store in my neighborhood, saw Paul and Wings and Style. My dad did too. My dad was there as well. Susan, Andy, I just did a quick online check of the Beatle Fest in Danvers. One was in 2003. So they were all in the aughts versus the 90s. Interesting. Okay. Well, that was college time for me. So going to Fest was not happening then. But yeah, that was knee deep in college time. So I was not able to go to any Fest really then. Like, I think the last I had gone to Fests in the 90s, 98, 99, 2001. And then I didn't go to another Fest until I think 2009. Russ asks, do we know if there's any studio footage like Get Back with the White Album, Pepper, Revolver, or others? There is some decent White Album footage and it's all out there on YouTube. And it was in the anthology, of course. There is good quality footage of the White Album sessions. Pepper and Revolver, I don't think as much. There's obviously great photographs of some of these sessions that are in Mark Lubison's recording sessions book, and they've appeared elsewhere. But there is some good White Album video footage that's been out there. And again, it's all on YouTube now. Yeah, well, that's the thing. That's the thing. It's tough. You can be in a position to do it or not. And I respect, Kit was like, I can't, she couldn't justify it, and I get it. And this is what I'm sure we'll touch upon the panel on collectors. I know Joe Mayo got it. I got the Cube. I'm sure that'll be a talking point as well. We're collectors, and we have our reasons for why we want to get it. Tony, I love how we've commandeered Peter Jack. Well, it's true. It's true, isn't it? Yeah. Forget what they say, Peter. You do this. Oh, man. I would like to just talk to him about the Lord of the Rings. Forget about the Beatles stuff, because I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan. I could talk to him for 4 hours just about those movies. But I'm sure he's been there, done that. He doesn't want to talk about it. Jimmy, I really hope Jackson steers clear of the AI restoration that plagued Get Back and do more of a natural-looking restoration like the new Let It Be release. Jimmy, I don't know if I agree with that. I mean, I know what you're saying, but without the AI, we're not going to hear that great conversation that John and Paul had in the cafeteria. With the Mal technology to separate everything else out. The dishes, the cups, because of AI, we heard a really, really, really important conversation that we never knew would have existed. So I don't know if I agree with that. I know what you're saying. A natural looking restoration, maybe a happy balance between the two would be better. I don't know. I know what you're saying, though. He can forget how he can. Matt, hey Matt, how you doing? Nice to see you on here. Makes me wonder. Yeah, I think, as Chip Mattinger has said, they asked him on that. And if you haven't, if you follow other podcasts, give the listen of things we said today. The last recap episode they did on the Mind Game set, that was with Chip. That was a very thoroughly enjoyable podcast. I don't get a chance to listen to much podcasts, but things we said today, and obviously Talk More Talk, because they're close friends. But those are the two that I listen to the most, and their episode, their discussion on the Mind Games Cube box set was really good with Chip. And Chip says, to your question, Matt, that sometime in New York City he thinks is going to be kind of broken up and sandwiched in these kind of releases of the one-to-one concert and some of the Mike Douglas stuff, and it's kind of going to come out that way. And I think if Chip's saying that, then I give it a lot of credit, because that's probably how it's going to come out. They'll put it as a bonus disc, maybe on this film that's coming out about the one-to-one thing, and they'll release a remixed version of the concert. You'll get the afternoon show, you'll get the evening show, and then maybe like a third disc will be a remix sometime in New York City, buried under, John Lennon and Yoko Ono, one-to-one, August, 1972, and they'll just slip it in there. It's probably the best way we're going to get that. Russ, the Beatles all had movie cameras. Did they or have Mal have someone film them while recording? That I don't know. Probably. The odds are that it was Mal. I'm thinking of the White Album footage specifically. Ringo's in that purple shirt. You can see Paul singing "Hey Jude." I'm probably Mal. I mean, there wasn't too many people that were allowed into the studio, right? So it was going to be one of the key people to do all that stuff. Exactly, Susan. Susan, you and I are simpatico on that. That's why we had 3 other sets of double vinyl on there, and that was the draw. Totally agree. Yes, I think they should have released a complete vinyl set of Mind Games at an affordable price. I don't disagree. Lawrence said he did some work on Rock's show. Lawrence Juber? That doesn't make sense. He wasn't in the band then. James, clarify that for me if you can. Scott, just out of curiosity, Beatles and solo songs, how many do you have on your PC? I don't. I'll look quick. I mean, just Paul McCartney alone. So I've just pulled up Paul McCartney on my iTunes, okay? I have 248 albums and like 6,282 songs, just under the Paul McCartney umbrella. I'm not going to go into everybody else, but that should give you an indication. That's what it says for Paul McCartney. And it's backed up, it's on a cloud, and I like ripping and storing the files this way because I can stream the files because they're my files. Although I do have Apple Music, if I want to hear something new before I get it, I can do that. That's how I do it. I think that's how Kit does it. I think that's how a few people do it. Yeah, vinyl more than CDs. Music sound gear. I recently got a Blu-ray Oppo with a DAC in it. I have a new appreciation for the Blu-ray audio that I played when I just had the CDs. I'm glad you said that. That's one aspect I have not done. I don't know why my screen's flickering, but whatever. I have not set up a proper 5.1 system yet. I just haven't had the time. Again, since 2018, it's like we get hit over the head with these mega releases. And how do we consume them all? Back in the day, we would have, in the 90s, if we got one of these, that would have satisfied us for years. I was talking to a good friend of mine, Steve, who's a fan of the show as well. And he told me the other day, we were talking about mind games, and he said, I'm still absorbing Plastic Ono Band box and the Imagine box from 2018 and 2021. And I said, Steve, I get it. There's so much content on all these discs. How do you make time for it all? And then another camp releases something. So when you throw the 5.1 stuff on top of it, if you're not set up for that and you have all this to get through, that is a long-term goal of mine, to get set up with 5.1 to listen to it and really enjoy it that way. But I haven't set up for it. I haven't, but I will. Bill, the rock show had a lot of overdub. Yes, it did. Wings Project was separate with a lot of, yes, I do. Beatle Fence 173. Do you think Peter Jackson could be working on Shea Stadium performance? Maybe. 2025 will be, exactly 60 years. Rubber Soul, the Beatles' first performance at Shea. Of course, they had two, 65 and 66. Possibly. And Shea Stadium, if you're old enough and of a certain generation, you remember the Beatles live at Shea had a home video release. I don't know who it was through, but I remember as a kid seeing that in like video stores, the Beatles live at Shea Stadium. It got a release. The quality wasn't great. I remember watching it. I remember asking, can I rent that, Dad, please? It's like 30 minutes. But it had a release, just like Magical Mystery Tour did. Limited, they had these things on VHS for a little bit. Jimmy, if we get another Beatles-related release this year, do you think that'll be Rubber Soul? That would be my best guess. I don't know. But, my best guess by the end of the year would be Rubber Soul. It's about almost a year ago now where the buzz about Now and Then was ramping up. And we found out in June of 23 it was coming out. We didn't know when. And then sometime around now, I think late August, early September, we knew it was going to be part of this expanded Red and Blue thing, which came out in November. Julian got, yes, I do. I saw that Julian got a special thanks in the book. I don't know what he contributed. Charlie says, or no, Now and Then without the AI. Maybe. Speaking of AI, when you go on YouTube and you see all these recommended videos, somebody did a AI version of Paul McCartney singing Aha's Take on Me. And when I see these videos, I'm like, I'm not going to go watch this. But I actually played it. It is scary how good the AI can be. It's not Paul McCartney, but man, the phrasing and everything is spot on. It's a slowed down version of Take on Me, but I saw it. I'm like, how are they doing this? How are they doing this? It's ridiculous. I don't know if anybody else saw that, but it came up recommended, Paul McCartney doing Take on Me. It's not him, but damn, it's scary good how AI is and what it's going to mean moving forward. Susan, Tony, you're not alone. Vinyl sure has regained popularity, but I grew up with vinyl and all its pops and clicks. So your personal preference is CDs. And, Susan, you were buying vinyl of the day when it was like $4 or $5 for a disc. Now it's $35, $40 for one title. let alone a double. Sound-wise, the AI was also... Oh, you mean the picture. The faces look like wax dolls without any detail. Okay. That's fair. Tony, only Beatles fans would find something to complain about with Get Back. 8 hours of footage, mostly unseen. Embrace it, kids. Yeah, that's the thing. We're never... The quench is never satisfied. The thirst for wanting more. It could have been 16 hours, and people would have said, well, you left out this. We have to be thankful for what we get. We're talking about a band that broke up 54 years ago, and they're still finding ways to market and make a profit. Listen, they're in the business to make money, and we are there to go, here you go, take my credit card, boom, done. And we all line up, and every one of us does it. That's on here, I think. So, Susan, I've learned by the local record store how to clean records so they're scratched. Yeah, you got to keep them pristine. I have no problem using the AI to separate. Yes, especially that stuff, and obviously all the early all the songs that were on the Red album that got that treatment was obviously the Red album was the crown jewel in that set, I think, and even the edited tracks. Does anybody know if the colored vinyl is still available or is that long gone? I am so lucky that I grabbed that on Beatles.com when it came out. I don't think it's available anymore. Sweet Apple Tracks. I remember that bootleg. I had that on a cassette. An uncle of mine had that from a friend and gave me a vinyl to a cassette version of Sweet Apple Tracks. I remember being like 15 going, oh, this is gold. I have Sweet Apple Tracks. That was a well-known bootleg. Jubert did some work on Rock Show because he was okay. Yeah, because obviously he was in the band and the release did happen, I think, in 80. I know it was at the Ziegfeld in New York. That makes sense, though, because LJ was in Wings, so he would have done some work on Rock Show, even though he wasn't in the band. Good point. Bill, I do the same thing with my music. I listen to everything on my phone when traveling, but the CDs and records at home. Best way to do it, Bill. Right? If you're in your natural habitat, put a CD on, put a vinyl on, or a cassette, and listen to it. When you're on the go, nothing better than that. Just popping thing. Although I do have friends that still bring CDs into their cars, which cars aren't even being made with CD players anymore. I had a mate of mine who got a new car a year or two ago. He actually had to pay the dealership more to put a CD player in it because he's like, Andy, I only listen to CDs. I said, Tommy, his name's Tommy. I said, what are you doing? I said, just play it on your phone, man. No, I got to have my CDs. It's funny. We're creatures of habit. We don't want to change. Matthew says, I encourage everyone to listen to Ocean's Kingdom on this afternoon. A perfect Sunday afternoon listen. That's a good recommendation. Mine's still sealed, although I have it. I have streaming. Yeah. Beatles live at Shea in 85. 85. I have this. Yeah, it's not the best quality. Tokyo 66, Washington 64, Shea 65. They came out in 85. Right. Those three were for sale for $19.99, which was a lot of money back then. Yeah. Poor quality. Hey, partner. They're in the business of making money. And that's what, here we are going, yeah, give me a firm. Give me that box set. Give me this. I mean, so they want to make a profit. They're a business, but they want to deliver the content to the fans, right? And I think they're doing a pretty damn good job. My only complaint would be I just wish things were spread out. Like in the 90s, the anthology came out in 95 and 96, and we were like, oh my God, 3 double CDs, 3 triple vinyls, and you had nothing until the Yellow Submarine song track in 1999. So you had 4 or 5 years to absorb all that material. 3 double CDs. I mean, I devoured those things. Flaming Pie sandwiched in between there. So now we're getting double that. We're getting multi expansive sets, and then the next year we're getting another one. So where is the time to divulge and listen to it all? So I am thankful we have it, and I don't want it to stop. And maybe one day, when the well dries up, we can look back and say, okay, now I have time to actually go through it, really dissect it like we did with the anthologies. in the 90s. It's my only thing. There's just it's so encompassing. My thing is, like a Ken Michaels, when these things come out, I go right to the outtakes. I want to hear the outtakes because I've never heard those before. So like that's what I did with Mind Games. I want to hear the outtakes and I want to read the book. The other stuff, the Ultimate Remix, the Elemental, I'll get to that eventually, but the outtakes first, and then I want to read and learn about what was just put into this. The players, the producers, and all that stuff. Information, knowledge. I want to take it all in. The other stuff, I'll get to it, but I'll go right to the outtakes first. I don't, but I used to be in line with my credit card 25 years ago. Now it's all streaming. And maybe we'll all get to that point too. We might. Excuse me. These Yetis keep coffee hot. And it's coffee, folks. It's Sunday morning. Some people like to ask, what's Andy got in there? It's coffee. It is Tom Hunyadi. Susan, when I was a teenager in the 60s, mono vinyl was $2.88 for years. Stereo was $3.88. And we had a junky mono record player. So my original Beatle records are mono. The format in which the Beatles wanted you to hear them, although not those American butchered releases, even though we love them. Well, you'll have to ask Tom if he did. He'll chime in. Oh, I'm bidding on, yeah. Not an eBay person, because I don't have the patience to sit there with somebody and wait, and then have somebody come in the last minute and then throw another $200 on what I want. No, if I can't buy it now with the little buy it now option, I'm not doing eBay because I wouldn't have a phone anymore. It would be smashed into smithereens. So, yeah, no. If I see it, I'll buy it. But I'm not sitting there with a bidding contest. I think I've won one eBay auction in 20 years. I don't have the patience for it. And I would go through multiple phones if I kept using eBay. So, Tom, you do you with your eBay. I'll stick to going in person and buying it, or buying it online for real. Let me go back to Jimmy. I had the classic late 80s vinyl bootleg ultra rare tracks on volume 1 and 2. That's a good one too. And then I think they made their way into CD as well too, didn't they? Well, no, that was Unsurpassed Masters. That was another great series of bootlegs, And back in the day, one bootleg CD cost like $30. It was a lot. I had to save like money for like half the year to go and buy like one title. It was a lot of money back then. I am a Julian fan, actually. I know I talk about not liking the kids, but out of all the kids, I like Julian's early stuff the best. I'd give it to it. I would give it a listen. I consider Everything Changes album as good as Walls and Bridges. Tony, that's some mighty praise, man. Walls and Bridges and an album by Julian. I'll separate the two of those. That's like apples and oranges times 10. Ultra Rare was the best quality. 89, yes, Russ. Ted, if vinyl didn't make a comeback, we'd be getting all these sets. If still in the CD world, only would we? Probably not, Ted. That's a good question. Probably not. Right. But would they be as expansive? That's a good polarizing question. Yep. Well, yeah. Tony, it's okay for a youngster like me. I'm not young, man. I'm 43, but I might as well be 80. It's okay for a youngster like you to have these releases spaced out, but for old gits like me, I want 2 box sets a year. No. Tony, I feel like I'm older than you sometimes. I was born too late. About 40 years too late. Well, you get that sometimes. You do. James, another one. I'm 60. Too many delays. Yeah, you guys all want it now. I guess I am showing my youth there a little bit, but interesting. Oh man. I think we'll see Lewison's book. Listen, we like to beat up on Mark Lewison. Let the man work his magic. We've got plenty of other books and great authors to absorb to get our Beatle material, to get our research. We've got Luca, we've got Adrian Sinclair and Alan Kozin. I think there's so many great books that are coming out or that have been out that we can dive into while we wait for volume 2. And we know that's going to be the end all be all. I still have to finish reading Tune In all these years. I got the extended cut from England back in the day. I read the first book. I haven't read the other one. There's just no time. I mean, those will be the end all be all. And if Mark, I know people like to beat him up, but I would let Mark take as much time as he needs to write the final word on it. And it will be the final word on it. You know that. You know that. It will be. Listen, do I want volume 2 here? Yeah, I do, but we're getting things like the McCartney legacy and books by Luca Perazzi now. So there are other great authors out there that are able to just, fill the void with what we're waiting for. McCartney lyrics book. I mean, there is no shortage of Beatle books coming out for you to kind of just dive into and read. Think about last year or 2 years ago, Jay Bergen's book, Lennon, the Mobster, the Lawyer, and Me. That was a wonderful addition to the Beatles library of books. All new first-hand perspectives. Jay Bergen will be in Chicago as well, too. And, I've read just about every Lennon book, so I looked at that one with a pinch of salt saying, is this going to be anything good? That was the first great Lennon book I had read probably in years, with all new, fresh stuff. So it's there. You're an old soul. Thank you. Thank you, Heidi. Joe, as far as the colored vinyl, I don't think it's available, but on eBay, it's $200 and up. I'm happy that I got a $200. Which colored vinyl are we talking about? Oh, are you talking about the red and the blue? Wow. Susan agrees with Jay. This is like the first generation fans are going, yeah, they want it now. Stop waiting. Yeah. All you first gen fans are like, enough waiting. Give it to us now. Time's a wasting. Oh, how do you please everybody? It's impossible, right? They were old souls. As am I. As am I. Stop! That's just cruel, man. Damn. That's awful. Ted, I think some Beatles stuff might be held back until the release of the 4. Okay. Hoping that the movies generate. Well, if you don't know who the Beatles are now, then you know what? Shame on you. Go listen to whatever you listen to. And that's going to be another focal point of discussion at the fest. Is one of the panels I'm on. The academic panel is researching the Beatles in the future. How is it done? How do we teach this stuff moving on to the to other generations? As just about there's not too many living people left from that first generation that are still going. Pete Best, Paul. There's not too many principal players left. So how do we then take? And I remember in Liverpool back then in 2010 or 11, my professor was like, "Look, people are passing now. So how do we take these firsthand stories and pass them down to future generations? Will they be interested? I don't know. I would like to see. I know there's plenty of college courses on the Beatles in America, like a one-off course, 3-credit course. Ken Womack teaches a full course on the Beatles, but it's just one course. The future of Beatles research is gonna dictate on the interest of newer, younger people being into it. And if the fest are any indication, and just knowing how much younger people like the music, that interest will be there. It will. I think it will be there. Will it be in the same droves that it's been? I mean, we're talking 60 years of a career here now, but the staying power is the music. Whether the kid's listening to it on Spotify and hears, Getting Better or A Day in the Life or Strawberry Fields, that's always been a focal point of discussion too. It's like album track listing doesn't matter anymore. And that saddens me a little bit, but as long as the kids are hearing the music and then it gives them, an inclination to dive in and learn more, then they can learn, okay, here's an album called Revolver that was made in 1966 and it was made like this. As long as the music is available and the kids like it, it will reach those who want to reach. And then if they want to go down the rabbit hole further and continue their studies and I think culturally and historically, it has to be studied. Just from the cultural impact alone. For everything, for music writing, producing, writing from a band, writing their own music, Breaking America. I mean, all the walls and doors that were opened just by what they did. Forget about how good the music is. The music is great, but just breaking down doors and becoming like the first boy band, which is what we can call them now, right? But that in 1964, that's in America anyway. That's what it was. So I think there will be an area for research always, especially as time moves on and we get these archival releases and we, the hardcore fans, find new stuff out that has been laying around for decades. Can you imagine I couldn't imagine being 21 now and learning all this stuff. Like if this was 2000 and we were getting all these releases now, then I would have been like, I'm done. This is great. So if there's a fan passionate and young enough now who's absorbing all this stuff, which there's plenty out there, they're living it up right now. They are. And studied as a reflection of the time and culture. Absolutely. Yes. From the time and place from which it was made. And I know in 2024, it's hard to do that, because we're all too busy scrolling on TikTok and the attention spans of most people are like this. But it's important. It's important to go back and learn that. And if we don't do that, then we're doing a disservice to the youth that want to learn more about this. Okay, there's a foundation, right? There's a foundation for all this stuff. Where does it come from? It just didn't show up. Okay, they owe a lot. They owe a lot to the sacrifices that the Beatles made and the mistakes they made. They weren't perfect. Russ, he's been doing this on the Beatles since the mid-'70s. He told me it took him 8 years to write Beatles live and recording sessions for almost 50 years. Yes. Beatles Live was a great book. And I remember reading recording sessions like it was the Bible. I remember reading that and the day-to-day entry, January 5th, 1967, the Beatles did, here's the studio. That was like a Bible. And he admits that there was some mistakes with that. I often wish that he would have published republished it with some updates and changes and stuff, but he never has. But that original hardback from 1988, that was the Bible. That was the Bible. I have it in PDF form now, which is great to reference to. Let me go back here. Messed up on some comments. The movies are coming out soon. So with 2020, but yeah, we'll see. We'll see on the movies. That'll be like when they come, we'll judge them. Again, I've said it before on this chat. Not the biggest fan of the biopics, but we'll see. We'll go. I'm sure there'll be a lot of talk about all of them. Russ is saying, I'm not beating up on him, Andy. I just think he would have finished this by now. In 2004, he said 2007 Volume 1, 2013 Volume 2, and 2017 Volume 3. Well, the man has to make a living too. He's not working for MPL or Apple. He's independent. He's done these fantastic presentations, these Evolver sessions, Evolver 62, Evolver 66. The man has to make a living. Unless we're gonna finance his, just to stay home and write, which none of us are doing. The man deserves a right to make a living, and he needs to. So that's why but I get it. You're told a certain date, and you think it's going to come out, and then it doesn't, and we're like, what the hell? Russ says I'm 60 heading into 61. All right, young at heart. Tony, we'll see you in Chicago. Matt, at the top of the broadcast, I had mentioned that Richard Porter, who is the London Beatles tour guide expert czar, reported that Paul had spent a week at Abbey Road in July. So that would kind of indicate that we've got a new album coming from Paul sometime in the fourth quarter here of 2024, if I had to guess. No, he's not. But he's healthy. And just a great guy. I was fortunate to have dinner with him and the Fest crowd in 2023 in New York when he was here. Great guy. Hopefully the four movies have the same resonance as the Bohemian Rhapsody. Yeah, well, Bohemian Rhapsody, Queen's always been a pretty big, successful band, right? A lot of the kids know their hits. That movie put Queen back on the map. And I knew, lots of kids were listening to Queen after that came out. So that was, out of all the recent kind of films on music, That one was pretty good. A little too Freddie focused. Queen was much more of a Democratic band than that movie depicted, but I thought it was good. Speaking of biopics, has anybody seen the trailer for the new Bob Dylan film with Timothy Chalamet as Bob Dylan? That looks tremendous. That looks awesome. I don't know when it's coming out, but I saw the trailer this week. That I will go to the movies to go see. Hands down. Done. Russ, Andy also, he's been doing this on the Beatles since the mid-'70s. He told me. Oh, I read that. We posted that one already. Sorry. Got to catch back up. Are we all caught up? Yeah. James, that movie was inaccurate about Murray. Yeah, I don't think that was. There was a twinge of that was not really accurate. But, I mean, the actors who portrayed the members of Queen were home run. That was worth going to see. The Elton John one, that was too all over the place. Present day. In the back, present day, back. That was too much. I was expecting a regular movie. Bohemian Rhapsody, the Elvis one was So yeah, biopics. Yeah, yesterday was cute. It was, with a theory about it. But this Bob Dylan one, I can't wait. I wonder if the Dylan Beatles meeting, maybe. Well, now you're talking about the document thing where they're just both sitting in the limo, stoned out of their mind. I don't know. I would think so. I mean, the Beatles first met Dylan in '64, right? So you would think that maybe they'll put it in there. It was a musical. It was. It wasn't a film. You know, I did not enjoy that movie. That would be cool if it. I mean, I think they do have to kind of touch upon it, but maybe it'll be like a thing where like Bob goes to meet the Beatles, but you don't see the Beatles. You know, I can't see they're gonna cast 4 people to be the Beatles meeting Bob. You know, redepicting that scene at the I forget what hotel that was where they met. Yeah, I don't think they're gonna have 4 people. Acting as the Beatles in the new film. Oh, okay. That's a shame, James, because I wasn't either until about 5 or 6 years ago, but I am now, and that's really, as I understand it, that's really Timothy Chalamet singing in the trailer too. He's singing "A Hard Rain's Gonna Fall." I think that's what I read, and he has the early Dylan look down pat. You know, Dylan first gets to New York in like 1960, 61. There he is walking around the Café Wa. Those of you know New York City, the Café Wa is still there. So, awesome. I can't wait for that. I just don't know when it's coming out. Can anybody tell me when that Dylan film's coming out so I can put that date on the calendar? As if it wasn't full enough already. The new films need to portray private moments and less public moments recreated to provide fresh perspectives. Well, now you're talking about creative license, Matt. Because those private moments are private for that individual. So, you know, now you're going to take a script writer who might have heard a story about something and puts his interpretation on it. And this is where fans and people, like the real people, are like, well, what are you doing? So it's very hard to portray private moments. Case in point, and we talked about this, I think, last week, was the Two of Us film, the biopic directed by Michael Lindsay Hogg. I talked about that. That's a super private moment that Michael Lindsay Hogg took a creative license with and made it interesting. Right? So it's not 100% real, but it's nice to think that this is what happened. You know? You're talking about the Beatles films. Well, I'll believe it when I see it. John's camp, I could see them going. John and George's camp, I could see them going, tell what you want to tell. Tell the story. Paul's, I don't know. Paul keeps things very close to the vest. I can't see him saying, just dish my whole life story, warts and all. I can't see that happening. There's going to be some airbrushing with stuff there. There is going to be. I know the states are involved. And I could see the Lennon camp especially saying, hey, this is John's story. Tell it. You know, Paul's gonna want to say, no. Take that out. And they're gonna take it out. Otherwise there'll be no movie. Such is the power of the man. Believe it. It was cool. And we'll be talking about movies we'll be talking about Broad Street in Chicago. I am putting together a nice multimedia slideshow on Broad Street that'll have some vintage clips from '84, interviews, some behind the scenes stuff, some great pictures and stuff, and collections from Ed Crawford. Objectivity, it is. It is. And I don't know if these films are going to be made that way. I don't know. And does anybody know which one is first coming out? It's 2027, right? Is the first time. So we've got a lot of time before these films come out. We're entering the fourth quarter of 2024. So these films are way off. Way off. But, they're, again, you take it as you see it. Some people love biopics. I could take or leave them. The fact that the estates are involved is a good thing. George's biopic, full of scenes of George writing reminders to hate and despise after the Beatles breakup. Yeah, and how are they going to be like, we're talking about maybe a 2-hour film, right? So are we going to see, is most of the film going to be about the Beatles period? Or is it going to be about their life after the Beatles? I don't know. That's why I think 4 films are so interesting. Because are we just talking about their lives from like birth until the end of the Beatles in 1970? Or are we talking about their lives in total? I think an easier way to do it would be just to make their lives about from like their birth to the end of the Beatles. I think that's probably the easiest way to do it. To do a full life biopic, that's a tall order. I think my gut tells me it's just going to be about them growing up, meeting each other, becoming a band, and then breaking up. To have a film about the Beatles and then their solo careers, now we're talking like multi films. There's not enough time for that. Matt, I saw a post on Facebook recently about Broad Street claiming its box office failure created a healing bridge for George and Paul. The comment did not include a citation. Any thoughts on this? That's interesting there, Matt, because we both know that George and Paul had both dabbled in films there. George a little more so than Paul. George, obviously, with Handmade Films, had his hand, pun intended, in a lot of films. And really, after Broad Street, Shanghai Surprise was in '85, right? Which was a dud with Madonna and Sean Penn, was it? I don't know that to be, I've never read that, but I could see that being a little bit of a healing bridge. The mid-'80s there, you've got the Hall of Fame induction ceremony. George kind of comes back, it's a really big prize, to worldwide attention with the success of Cloud 9 and Got My Mind Set on You, which you knew had to just make Paul super, super jealous. He would never admit it. But the fact that Broad Street was a dud and George had his problems with films, I could see that being a healing bridge. I just don't know. I don't know if there's any proof of that. I kind of doubt it, given that it was the '80s and things were still pretty contentious between the two at the time. Obviously, Paul's non-appearance at the Beatles Hall of Fame induction ceremony in New York. Again, that's just conjecture at this point, but it's a nice sentiment. If you could send me that link, I'd like to see it because I might be able to use that for my presentation. Well, Shanghai Surprise. What's George's best film that he ever was involved with, right? I think it's Time Bandits. Time Bandits for me is the best one of George's that he's been involved with for sure. Obviously the Monty Python stuff, but Time Bandits for me is the best George involved project. Yeah, exactly. Definitely Time Bandits. Certainly does, Joe. Susan, I hope these biopics do Beatles justice and are exciting enough to capture the attention of new fans without mythologizing the Beatles. It is. This is what I'm saying. How do you tell this story objectively, as Matt just said a few comments ago, but also create a story compelling that is made for the masses and has the blessing of all the Beatles? Would not want to be that director. No way, no how. Because it's 2024. Objectivity is key. Tell the story the right way, which I think the Lewisons are doing. The Sinclairs and Cozens are doing. The Perazzis are doing. They're using historical fact to tell their story. And we know that there's been a lot of whitewashing, especially given certain periods of the Beatles' career to obscure or kind of just not draw attention to it. How do you balance that? LJ is on the show. Okay, did not know that, Mike. Can't wait to see you in Chicago. Time Bandit series on Apple TV. Haven't a series? Interesting. Dream Away was the George song on that, wasn't it? Matt, I think it would be interesting to see the 4 new Beatles films tracking their entire career with 4 distinct periods told with 4 distinct point of views, perhaps in the order they joined the band. That's a fair comment. So we're starting with John, obviously, right? We're starting with John and the Quarrymen in the 50s. Joe says, I think Wayne's World did more for Queen than Bohemian Rhapsody did. That's fair. Because I remember when that movie came out, I didn't know that much about Queen. And then everybody and their mother was doing this to Bohemian Rhapsody because it was in Wayne's World. So, I don't know if it did more, but I definitely know that Bohemian Rhapsody definitely brought Queen into the mainstream of younger people at the time. I mean, there were more Queens. You saw Queen posts and shirts and lots of kids into Queen. I mean, I am sure people did back then too, and then when Wayne's World came out. But I would like to call that a tie, Joe. I think we would call it a tie. Matt says there's an argument to be made that Ringo's point of view. Yeah, and people have said that they're interested in seeing Ringo's film the most. You know, for a guy who was so sick and wasn't even supposed to survive childhood, here he is now, 84, still going strong. It could be. You know, he joins the band in 62, in August of 62. You know, you've got 5 years of history before that with John and Paul and George joining. I don't think so, but I must say that the Best family does a great job of keeping the Liverpool period of Pete Best's life with the Beatles a great job, especially with the museum and the Casbah. I mean, Rogue, if anybody's friends with Rogue on Facebook, they just do a great job of really embracing that. And I like that Pete is okay now, 60 years later, 60 plus years later, with what his place is in history. It all worked out for the best. The fact that he's okay with it, the fact that he can embrace his period with the Beatles is pretty awesome. David Lee Roth's uncle owned the Cafe Wha? Didn't know that. Was he just a gigolo? I don't know. I think Sam Mendes directing the 4 movies gives me hope to be, hopefully. But the first 2 Beatles to meet were Paul and George. Exactly. They knew each other, right? They knew each other because they went to the same school. So where do you start the film? I think the first film has to be John. It's got to be John. The first film has got to be about John. Yeah, Paul and George knew each other, but the Beatles started with John. They were his band. And, you know, that'll go into, I'm sure, the career. I've always felt the Beatles were kind of led by John and Paul in 2 phases. I think it was John's band from like 57 until the end of touring. And then from the end of touring, Paul was like, I'll take over. I've always felt that. I've written essays on it, backing it up. You know, John was checked out, was just kind of just stoned on LSD, doing his thing. And Paul, while Brian was still alive, was like planning the next album. You know, Sgt. Pepper, doing this, doing that. So I've always felt that the Beatles were led by John and Paul from 2 different eras. From its inception, being John, and then Paul taking over. But not really, because Paul always knew that John had the final word. That's why when John was like, I'm quitting, I'm done. So I kind of, a little bit of a contradiction on my part, but Paul clearly was the driving force for the band from maybe even Revolver on, not even Pepper, but knowing that John was still the guy who was the leader. And that secret documentary, that secret recording from Get Back still shows Paul looking up to John as the leader. He did. It always was John's band, but there is no doubt that, and Ringo has said this, you've seen that clip of Ringo, he's always, if it wasn't for Paul, we would have put like 3 albums out because John and I were just hanging in the garden. We were just hanging out in the garden. I think it always was John's band, but he deferred to Paul to do everything and plan everything out and write everything from Pepper on. And I don't think that can be disputed. I mean, even John will tell you that. But it still was John's band. I do agree with that. He started it and ended it, but Paul clearly took the reins there and said, okay, guys, time to go to work. Exactly. He says, you've always been the boss, and I don't want to be, but I will if I have to. That's that conversation that we were talking about that was secretly recorded. So yeah, so those are fascinating ways to kind of think about the dynamic of the relationship for that with the films. So there'll be no shortage of things to talk about. I just don't know when they're coming out. Does anybody have a timeline or a release date for any of these films yet? I've heard 2027, but I don't know. Well, you've got that, Russ, with Backbeat. I think Backbeat serves that period as well. So Backbeat covers the pre-Ringo era the best way. Another one of the very few good biopics. Saw that in the movies when it came out in '94, and that was good. That was very good, and I think that's probably the best one. Has anybody not seen Backbeat? That's worth the watch, for sure. And then George gets his high point at the end with Abbey Road. Okay. Huh. Paul stepped in. Exactly. But still knowing that John was the one to say, fellas, this is what, I'm out of here. I'm leaving. So we'll see. But, wow, I've been on for an hour and 10 already. Wow. So any other questions before I close it out here? It's 12:45. I've been on for about an hour and 10. I think I'm going to probably wrap it up here. I will probably, I don't know if I can yet, but next Sunday I'll be in Chicago. Maybe I'll go live next Sunday morning from Chicago and do this again. Maybe with Tom, maybe me just solo. I don't know. I will bring my laptop, but I will try to go live next Sunday as well. And then we'll do a recap thing. I don't know if I'm going to go live every night to do a recap. Maybe we'll just do a recap at the end of the fest because we're going to be busy the whole time. So I don't know. In the past, I've done a recap each night. I don't think I'm going to do that this year. Maybe Tom and I will just do one big recap once we're home. And maybe I'll go live on Sunday morning before everything kind of gets going. But thank you. No, thank you. I am going to sign off, so I'm going to just thank everybody now. Matt, thank you very much for your comments. Great conversations today. Great points. Great talking points. Really, thank you. I appreciate that. You contributed to the conversation well. Susan, Tony, Mom, Heidi, everybody, Joe, Russ, Mike, everybody that's been on here, Music Sound Gear, my mom, everybody, Tony, thank you, and Ted as well. Enjoy your Sunday. Listen to good music. Rock on. Beatly Tone as well, who's still tuned in. Thank God. I almost forgot Tony. And James as well. Thank you. Yeah, please give us a like and follow. We're getting there. We'll have t-shirts in Chicago, white and black ones too. And if you're not going to Chicago and you'd like a Two Legs t-shirt, please email me, message me on Facebook, send me an email, either at myself or the Two Legs, and we'll have a shirt made for you, okay? So let me know. We've got white and black ones as well. So if you'd like a two-leg shirt, send us an email and we'll get it to you, okay? Thank you, Joe, Tony, James. Tony, continue to recover, man, and thinking of you. All the best to you, mate, okay? And to Kim as well. Love to you both. All right? Enjoy your Sunday. Rock on. And we'll see you from Chicago. Bye.